All right, our viewers, you are welcome to this virtual studio hosted by the Alliance for Campaign Finance Monitoring. My name is Henry Muguzi. I am the Executive Director of Alliance for Campaign Finance Monitoring. And for those of you that are getting to be introduced to Alliance for Campaign Finance Monitoring for the first time, allow me to let you know that it is a coalition of 18 civil society organizations that banded together to do something about the challenges related to money in politics and electoral processes. And so we are a Pan-African organization, but founded in Uganda. And for now, we are working in Uganda to set up base and consolidate base in Uganda. And one would ask a question. Why do you want to speak about money in politics now? Why is that important? The answer is, increasingly in Africa, elections seem to have gotten some popularity that when you look across the continent, quite a number of countries are conducting elections. Last year, we had about 9 countries conduct elections. This year, COVID-19 notwithstanding, we expected about 15. Next year, we expect around almost the same number. In the region where we are located in East Africa, of course, we have had elections this year. Elections from Burundi. We have had. We are going to have elections in Tanzania. We are having elections in Uganda next year, and Kenya shortly after. But the challenge that we seem to be having as a continent is that the more democratic elections have gotten popular, the more we have seen too much money circulating in our electoral processes, too much money circulating in our politics. And of course, it is mind-boggling where that money is coming from. But that's not the most worrying thing. The most worrying thing is that politics has gotten so commercialized that whoever gets to participate in the political arena does so for money. If I start with the electorate, you get to see that when they come to participate, they are participating because they expect something in return. They no longer look at the quality. They no longer consider the capability and competencies of the leader. They look at their pockets.
You are welcome, Peter. Can you hear me?
Across the country, across the borders, Ugandan borders in Kenya, my very good friend, Professor P.L. Lumumba, contested in the elections, and there was no contestation about the qualities Professor P.L. Lumumba had. Professor P.L. Lumumba conducted the biggest number of town hall meetings. He campaigned more than anybody else. But when it came to election day, the people voted the other candidate. And then it dawned on him that the African voter, of course, considers more money than ideas. But there is more. The men and women who manage our political parties, the men and women who parade themselves as candidates, are men and women who do so largely not because they want to serve their countries, but because of they want to satisfy their selfish ends. And therefore, it goes without saying that man has become a problem. And because the people who participate in there do so for private ends, corruption has gotten further ingrained and has become so endemic. And when the cross-section between corruption and political finance creates a situation that makes it very difficult for democracy to blossom and thrive in our countries. But there is more. The downside is that the more politics becomes commercialized, the more the people who have selfish interests outside of politics, and I'm talking about foreigners, foreign interests, terrorist interests, but I'm also talking about commercial interests. These people would look at election period as a window of opportunity to bankroll candidates and political parties, majorly for quid pro quo reasons. The point being that when these men and women get into political office, their responsibility is to ensure that all the public contracts that there are goes to those companies that bankrolled them. But in the event that there is another organization that had other interests other than economic, it means therefore that they will use that financing as a conduit, as a platform to capture the instruments of the state, the people who occupy the state office, the institutions of the state. No wonder today the topic, the subject of state capture is gaining traction in Africa every day. And this is the most worrying thing. But the silver lining, though, is that we actually have no excuse because we are in a situation where European countries have been before. The Americans have been here before. They have had such challenges. Ours is to do the simple thing. And the simple thing is to reflect on what they did. And one thing they did was to legislate, to control and safeguard their monies, their politics from the vagaries of commercialized politics. I take the opportunity to welcome Peter, Mr. Peter Wandera. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We've been waiting for you.
Thank you, Henry.
Yes.
I had some few technical hitches, but now I think
Okay, Mr. Wandera, we are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. We are also live on Twitter. And of course, a lot of people have been waiting for you. And allow me to introduce. Mr. Peter Wandera is the Executive Director of Transparency International Uganda. Now, for those of you who may not have interacted with the Transparency International Uganda before, at least you have interacted with either physically or through audio. You've interacted with one of their most popular products. And that product is that annual publication that is released, the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, that of course has consistently rated many of our countries among the league of those that are perceived to be the most corrupt in the country. And therefore today we are privileged to host Mr. Wandera. And Mr. Wandera, thank you for making the time to come. And allow me, we are going to talk basically within the realm of the CPI, especially the CPI of 2019, whose theme rotated around money in politics, political financing we're talking about. So, Mr. Peter Wandera, if I can start, for many of those viewers who have been hearing about Transparency International, and every year they get to hear information about how their countries are performing with regard to fighting corruption, but they have never come up close and personal with you. Would you please explain in simple terms how the Corruption Perception Index is conducted and why is countries like Uganda and Kenya rated among the most corrupt in the world? What is it that we are doing that rates us as most corrupt?
Thank you, Henry. First of all, I'm glad I'm on this show. And thanks for having me. To get back to your question, the CPI is simply an aggregate of scores which are generated by Transparency International, which rank the countries according to the perception of how corrupt These scores are not are not uh, are not generated per se by Transparency International. What happens is that we get scores from several sources, what we call data sources, and each right now we have 13 data sources, and each country must have at least 6 scores from those data sources. What happens? We identify the data sources. Um, Last year there were 13, and these are prominent organizations, both business and those dealing with issues of governance. And to qualify as a data source, you must be having a research or a study you do every year or every 2 years, which gives scores on the levels of corruption as seen by your organization. And to qualify further, your research should cover more than 2 countries. It should be across countries. You don't, if you're only in one country, you don't qualify to be a data source. Then you should also be doing this research regularly. Let's say either annually, after 2 years, and etc. And you should be comparing between different countries. Yeah, so it's quite steep to become a data source. So what happens after getting the data from these sources? We do what we standardize the data, because some of the data is out of 10, some is out of 100, 50, name it. So we standardize it and put it on a scale of 1 to 100. Then it's on that scale that we generate the CPI. So the CPI per se is not from data that is from Transparency International. We use data from other sources. Yeah, so after generating the percentages, we release the CPI results. Yeah, so globally we have, as mentioned, 13 data sources, and each country should have at least 6. Uganda has 6 data sources. These include IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, and several others. Yeah, so it is quite a technical piece of work that is with time it has been tested, it has been put to test. People have discussed it, people have dismissed it, but it's the only source, I think, globally that has the most accurate information on corruption. Yeah, and why Uganda and maybe Kenya performs quite poorly, it's because that's what they are. They are more corrupt than other countries. Yeah, you look at
Yeah.
countries like Denmark and New Zealand. For example, they score 87, 88%. You compare it with Uganda. Uganda last year scored 28%. And that's what it is. It's what we are. We are corrupt, and that's what the CPI says. Yes.
You are right. You say you are corrupt. We are corrupt, and that's what it is. But we are where we are at. So I think it's much work for us. So, Mr. Wandela, I recall very vividly that the Corruption Perception Index report of 2019 makes a number of suggestions, but among them, they suggest you are suggesting reducing big money in politics as being essential for curbing corruption. In your view, what is the relationship between money in politics and corruption? Help us draw a correlation.
Yeah, you see, first of all, when there's a lot of money into politics, it distorts the final results. It distorts the integrity of the whole process, because we find that actually people do not vote because of competences. They're instead voting for money, which should not be the case. Then, secondly, with too much money into politics, you find that corruption thrives because people have to get that money. So you find that actually some of this money is out of proceeds of corruption. If you don't have all this money going into politics, then the corruption levels most likely will go down. But because people are on pressure to have money to go into politics, that's why you find that during corruption years, corruption goes up. Then thirdly, it also affects the quality. It affects the quality of representation. And once the quality of representation is affected, because now you're not voting ideas, you're voting money, you get a parliament that isn't very representative. It's representative in terms of number, but it's not representative in terms of ideas. Yeah, so that compromises, and once it compromises the quality of people you're sending to the house, it will compromise a lot of things. It will compromise the decisions they make. It will compromise the way they behave. It will compromise a lot of things. Now, for next parliament, I think we're having 527 MPs. So imagine if you sent there 527 MPs who went there because of money. Of course, their first idea is how to recoup what they invested, because now politics has become an investment of some sort. People are going into politics not because they want to serve, it's because they are looking at the end results. How much money are they going to get out of parliament? Then, of course, eventually you'll find a lot of pressures, they'll get loans, they can't pay what they invested in. So it even becomes a life and death situation. That's why you find people down there who are vying for becoming members of parliament, shooting each other. Hooliganism is on the rise. It's because
Yeah.
now politics, going to parliament, is a matter of life and death. People have invested a lot of money there. People have invested their savings. They have mortgaged their houses. They have they've done all sorts of things to get this money. So if you stand in their way, you're standing in the way of their livelihood. Yeah, so now politics has become more of a business. It's not more about service. Maybe you can even see that people now vying. When you see a person as maybe a former musician, I'm just giving an example. People should not get me wrong. They should not get excited. But if right now they are going into politics, what's happening is because now their their career in politics is in music is fading. Now they see this as an opportunity of making money, which shouldn't be the case. You find civil servants, as they come to retirement age, they see they have no future in their civil service. What do? They go to politics. So it's becoming more and more of an investment, more of a job to be done than an opportunity to serve the population.
Of course, and indeed, I can't agree more. And of course, the 2 points you raise there is that the proceeds from corruption in one way or the other find their way into financing politics. And I recall vividly a few months back when the president said that he had chased a crowd of thieves from URA. And when the campaigns for NRM party primaries emerged, we saw one of the members of that crowd that was chased from URA contesting in one of the constituencies down in Western Uganda. And the way he was spending money, it was as if money is not a problem. And of course, the other point you make is that during election years, corruption goes up. And I think this should be a concern to all of us Ugandans and Africans in general, because if we do not pay close attention to to some of these things, we will lose the point. Mr. Wandela, what are the other recommendations that the CPI report 2019 makes in terms of promoting electoral integrity, but also in terms of getting to control this menace called corruption?
Yeah, when you look at the CPI 2019, each CPI year will have a theme. The previous year we have had a theme on issues around media freedom and the press. The other year we had a theme on human rights. What happens? You pick a particular theme that affects the levels of corruption globally. So last year, the theme that was picked was political integrity and political financing. Yeah, so that's where we are coming from to have one of the recommendations as being controlling political financing. The other recommendation was strengthening electrical integrity. We all know what happens when the integrity of elections is compromised. Like right now, if you look at the country, there are a lot of petitions. It's because people do not trust the integrity of the election. There's no one who comes out and says, yes, I've been defeated. No, it's because they don't trust the process. Everyone is petitioning left, right, and center. So it's very important as a country, as the world, to strengthen the political integrity. That whatever comes out of any electoral process, people are comfortable with it and they can trust it and they can agree with it. Yeah, so that was the second recommendation. Then the third recommendation was we should manage conflict of interest. You all know that corruption thrives in conflict of interest. When people have conflict of interest, they are bound to be more corrupt. People do things not because it's what they're supposed to do, that, but because they have an interest in whatever they're doing. So another recommendation was that there should be proper management of conflict of interest. Then there was also a recommendation that activities of lobbying activities should be regulated, because you find everyone lobbying left and right, but what goes behind that lobbying? Is there regulation around it? Or people just lobby openly without any guideline? So one recommendation is that these activities should be regulated. Then governments have also been called upon to tackle preferential treatment. Let's treat everyone equally, with equity and with justice. So we shouldn't treat somebody preferentially because it's from FDC, it's from NRM. Let it be. Let's not go into preferential treatment. Let's stop it. Let's treat everybody with equity and justice. Then another recommendation was empower citizens. In the fight against corruption, it's very, very important to involve citizens. Once you're not involving the citizens, you have a lot of challenges ensuring that all the anti-corruption initiatives that are introduced are successful, because the citizens are the most powerful ally in the fight against corruption. Then lastly, the last recommendation that there should be reinforcement of checks and balances. Yeah, and the key word here is reinforcement of checks and balances. We are not saying that they are not there, they are there, but let them be reinforced. Because once they are there and they are on paper and they're not being reinforced, then we end up in trouble. For example, in Uganda, we have a very good laws. We are benchmarked by different countries, but when we reach implementation of all this, we don't do it. So we end up scoring very badly with corruption perception. Yes.
Thank you very much, Peter, because you're raising two very interesting things. The first one is the issue of electoral integrity. I was reading the International Electoral Integrity Report 2019, and it is ranking Uganda as one of the only 12 countries in Africa that are categorized in the group of those they call countries with very low integrity. Now, to go into this category of very, very low integrity, it slipped from low integrity in 2018 to very low electoral integrity. And so the issues of electoral integrity here are critical. And when you look at the other countries that Uganda is being categorized with, you have Djibouti, you have Burundi, you have DRC. So these are not good things. And so the issue of electoral integrity. But then also the other point you make is the issue of regulate lobbying activities. We do know that in countries like Uganda, you have people who have commoditized the presidency. They charge money for whoever wants to see the president. They have actually captured the presidency in some way or the other. And therefore, these are some of the things that get to undermine our politics, the integrity of our politics and elections, but also get us into captivity. And the third one, the third point you stigmatize is the point of reinforcing the existing rules and regulations, which doesn't seem to be happening. And those are very interesting things. Mr. Wandela, if you remember, we have just completed the chapter on NRM party primaries. And for too many Ugandans, we were privileged thanks to the digitalization of the society today. Because today you are able to see whatever is happening in real time, because everybody has a smartphone. They can take videos and they can post this live. And so what we saw during NRM party primaries, on the lines where they were lining up to choose their leaders, it was money flying all over the place. Retired Justice James Ogola compared those lines to the analogy he gave was that of ATM machines. They were just spitting money. Now, what is your take on the volume of money that circulated in the NRM party primaries just concluded?
Yeah, I think the way money flowed, it was looking at the positive of it is that it opened our eyes. It exposed the weaknesses, the structure. It exposed the weaknesses in the regulations. It was an opportunity to expose. So with this exposure, our eyes have been opened, and now we see how bad the situation is. Because previously it was being done less openly, but now this has opened our eyes. Even people were saying that these things do not happen. They're seeing it firsthand. So for me, I take it in the positiveness of it that now we can see and we have got something concrete to refer to. Yeah, and maybe had it been that we'd keep quiet, and as we go to the actual election, things blow up. But now, since we have seen what it is, I think it's time for us now to reflect what are the regulations in place. Are these regulations ample enough? Are they sufficient enough? Because I'm sure the law does not allow bribery of voters. But what happened? Nothing happened. People went ahead and bribed. So, how can we enforce this law? How can we enforce even other regulations related to corruption in the political process? So, I, for one, I think this was an eye opener. I think it was an exposure of the weaknesses in the system, in the structures, which gives us an opportunity to go back to the drawing board, gives us an opportunity to reflect and see how best to ensure that this is not repeated in the general elections.
You're right, and of course we are joined by a number of colleagues, including Ruth Namara, and she's asking a question that having laws is not enough. Do we have an ecosystem in place that is going to actualize this legal framework? Would you want to answer that, Mr. Ondela? She's asking, yes, she's asking that she's saying that having laws is not enough. And she's asking, do we have an ecosystem in place that is going to actualize this legal framework, the legal framework for anti-corruption?
I'm not sure what she refers to as ecosystem. That's the institutional framework.
I don't know.
The institutional framework.
Maybe institutional framework or legal framework or something. I think institutional framework or even culture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course, within a lot of things are important if a legal framework is to be implemented. The first one is the institutional framework. Do we have the institutions in place? Are they effective? Are they vibrant? Um, the answer there is first of all, yes, we do have the institutions in place, and the effectiveness is the only thing that is wanting. They are not being very effective, but the institutions are in place. Then, of course, we come to the political will. Is there political will within these institutions to carry out their mandate? Sometimes when people speak of political will, they look at the number one, but political will cuts across. It can even be institutional. Do the heads of those institutions have the political will? Do they have the political muscle and the determination to ensure that actually their institutions work? Then, of course, if we also come down to the people themselves, the citizens, how are the citizens taking? Because it takes two to tango. This corruption is not taking place from one side alone. There are the receivers also. How are they viewing it? How is their attitude towards issues of corruption? Is it something we're accepting? I, for one, believe that now people are accepting it. They are taking it as a norm. There's a lot of apathy down there. People believe that actually this is an opportunity for them also to eat from that cake. So if we look at the citizens also, how are they behaving? What's their culture? What's the society like? Because once you have a very misguided society, once you have a society that is compromised, once you have a society that hasn't got the moral authority to resist some of these things, I think it does affect the implementation of all these laws. Yeah.
I think you're right, Peter. Of course, one scholar once asked whether or not if you remove the money from the NRM and left it with the rest of the other machinery it has, and kind of switched roles. You got the money NRM has and gave it to GEMA, and then got the money GEMA has and gave it to NRM, and let NRM fly with its institutional framework. Will it still go on to win? The question is, some people argue that perhaps not. And so the argument they make is that without money, you cannot win, because society, as you're talking about it, society has been so monetized, and everybody thinks getting participating in politics provides an opportunity for them to eat. Like one Kenyan once said, it's our chance to eat. If I can ask another question, Mr. Wandera, in the view of what we've just talked about in terms of how we saw money flying in the party primaries, what do you think Ugandans should expect? Like, paint us a picture of what Ugandans should expect in terms of money in politics come election. The nomination, we start nominations this month on the 19th with members of parliament. Of course, in November, we will nominate the presidents. What should Ugandans expect between now and February, when the election will be conducted or concluded, in terms of money circulating in our politics? More money, less? What do you think?
Yeah, as you see, even nominations have been put ahead. It's rumored that it's because of the very many petitions that are in place from the primaries. And this was connected with the money, of course, that went into it. No one is accepting defeat. People have invested a lot of money in this. So we are seeing a lot of petitions, and it's affecting the nominations. Yeah, so if nothing is done, if there's no about turn, then I think the situation is going to get worse. Because already people have invested their money, stakes are high, and now they are going into higher stakes. So if there's no about turn, most likely we are going to see elections that have more and more money poured into them, because those who have been in primaries, they have experienced it. Maybe they feel that actually in the next phase, they should even inject more money. I don't think anyone who has been in the primaries is looking at investing less money. All of them are looking at pouring in more and more money. So most likely we're going to have a very hotly contested, a very distorted election, if I may use that word, because now it's going to be money that is going to speak. So it's up to us as civil society to reach down to our people down there and do the best we can to see that actually money ceases being the important factor in the elections. Otherwise, the phase we are going to do, the stakes are higher. Most likely, we are going to see more and more money being poured into the process.
I agree, and of course, our viewers out there, we don't want, I and Mr. Wandera don't want you to misconstrue us to be prophets of doom. But the thing is that if we don't have about turn, like Mr. Wandera is saying, we are likely to see to face a situation of distorted elections, a situation of elections without integrity, a situation that nobody wants to have. a situation that will make Uganda slip much deeper, lower into the negatives of electoral integrity deficits. Mr. Wandela, from the experience of Transparency International Uganda, maybe for Ugandans out there who think that maybe that government has been trying to do enough, we're hearing from the meetings we have members of the Intelligence Forum claim they've done enough. They wonder why Transparency International continues to rate Uganda as one of the most corrupt. Yes, yet they think they're doing enough. In your experience, why is corruption in Uganda persistent, and what should the ordinary person, the muntu wa wansi, do to curb corruption, in your view?
Yeah, a lot can be done to curb corruption. We can even take the whole day, but since you have tied it down to the population, I think the local citizens should first of all realize that actually corruption eventually affects them. Because what happens, most people see it as something that is beyond them, something that is not affecting them. There was a story that was told of somebody who was reading the newspaper, and there was a story about corruption. Then these people, some people concerned that you people, you see all this money is being eaten by the corrupt. Then other people around him were saying, why is it your concern? Is it your money? You see that attitude, is it your money? Why are you concerned? Let people eat. It's their offset. Which means that people really do not relate corruption to their daily lives. So it is important for people to be sensitized, to be made more aware that actually when corruption takes place at the central level, it eventually affects hospitals, it eventually affects the infrastructure, it eventually affects all the services that they would have got. But people being in the comfort zone, I'm thinking that actually corruption is only at the center. If people eat money, they are opportunity, let them eat money. For them, they are not affected. So that type of attitude should change. So the citizens should come out strongly and speak out, because we even see that people are more corrupt because they feel that actually there's acceptance by society. Society does not question why people are getting money. Society does not question why a person becomes rich overnight. When a person becomes rich overnight, they believe that he's clever. Then he's glorified. He's given the front row in church. He's invited for weddings and so on. But if society could come out and interrogate its own, that you person, yesterday you're driving a bicycle, but now you're driving a Range Rover, where is this money coming from? If they could shun the corrupt, because in the Western world, if you have if there's any suspicion that you have some corrupt practices around you, people will begin avoiding you. But instead, in our society, people reach out more to you and they make you very comfortable. So with such attitude, with such apathy down there, you find that actual people are being corrupt because they're being accepted by society. Then maybe something else that the citizens should do. They shouldn't fear to report. They shouldn't fear to bear witness, because some of our researchers found that actually people do not report corruption even when they know that corruption has taken place. Some is out of fear, some is because they're involved in it, some is because they don't know where to report. So if citizens could be made more aware of their duty to report as citizens, they should be made more aware to where to go, to where can they report, etc. I think issues of corruption shall be reduced to a minimum. Yeah, of course, there are other things like the implementation of laws, etc. But then that is more at the government side. But as a citizen, you should be ready to come up and witness. We have seen cases of corruption being defeated in courts of law because people are not ready to come out and bear witness. People do not want to be witnesses. Yeah, so these are some of the issues that I think if we work on, if the citizens came on board in the fight against corruption, we'll see a big difference.
I think you've spoken well, Mr. Wandela, especially the point of us as citizens also taking our own share of the blame, because it is us as citizens who seem to have, in a way, allowed these men and women who are voted into office to go out there and collude with the technocracy to loot. For as long as they can share the loot with us, there is a sense in which we have allowed that to happen. But also the way we gratify these men and women who get to enrich themselves so quickly, to make the rest of the citizens look as if amassing wealth is a matter of working so hard. The issue of not shunning the corrupt, the churches welcome them, because come to face it, a thief who has stolen shillings and a thief who has stolen chicken are one and the same, because he's a thief. He's a thief. But we tend to gratify the one who has stolen shillings, and then we condemn the one who has stolen goats or chicken. And therefore, we have to take our share of the blame as the citizenry. And as we get into politics, we get into to vote in February next year, which is, about 3 4 months away. Let us make sure that the men and women we vote into those offices are men and women of integrity, men and women who will not collude with the technocracy, but instead protect our resources to ensure that we get to benefit in terms of service delivery. Our audience, we have come to the end of this virtual studio, but so I'm going to allow Mr. Wandera to have his parting shot, and then we will end this session. Mr. Wandera, your parting shot.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. Just like to assure those watching that the fight against corruption is possible. We should not lose heart, because once we lose heart, then corruption shall overwhelm us. Let's do the little that we can. The little that we can, if everyone does his little part, then eventually we shall have a big movement and a very big corruption.
Thank you very much. We are going to have to come back with to you, our audience, next week. Next week we have a different guest, a quite interesting guest, and it is a lady this time. We hope to host Madame Cecilia Kagaba, who happens to be the executive director of Anti-Corruption Coalition of Uganda. And when she comes, we shall talk about political corruption and state capture in Uganda. Thank you very much. Our listeners and audience, wherever you've been, in Uganda, in Africa, but also Europe and the US, we are glad you are able to make the time to join with us. Make sure you don't miss us as we discuss some of these topics that are intended to streamline and sanitize the politics in Africa, because it's you and I to do this, because if it's not you, then who? I thank you very much, our audience. May the good Lord bless you. Thank you, Mr. Wandera, for making the time.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Great. Okay.